Hello, my little birdies, and welcome back to another fabulous drawing tutorial from me, Miss Birds. Last week we went over the male face and we drew the entire face with all of the facial features. We didn't do any shading, but that's okay because that's probably what we will be doing when we draw our female face. Now, of course, if you split your paper in half as I did, I'm just going to be using the back side, so that's what I would suggest when you're drawing your female. Just use the same exact paper that you used for your male. If you don't have that paper for one reason or another, you can just grab a new sheet of paper. I wouldn't suggest using a full sheet of paper, but breaking it down in half is going to give you a nice size face. Okay, so I'm just going to flip my paper over, and for this first part of our drawing tutorial for our female, I'm going to go about it maybe just a little bit faster than I did initially the first time when we did the male, because setting up the facial structure and the construction lines is going to be the same exact thing that we did with the female, or sorry, with the male. So for the female, we're going to start exactly as we did with the male. We're going to start by creating a very large circle on our paper. Remember last time I showed you, if we do this little movement here, wait until your arm is kind of in the rhythm or the motion of creating that circle, and then you can go ahead and put that circle down. Of course, remember, it does not have to be a perfect circle. Remember, we will be going in and erasing out the bottom, and then also keep in mind that the top of the circle is going to be partially covered up by hair. So it's okay if the circle is not exactly perfect. I'm just gonna go through and kind of round mine out a little bit. But remember, you want it to be a good size circle. We don't want it too small, but we want it to take up a large portion of our paper. Okay, so once we have created our circle, remember we are going to split it in half vertically. And of course, these are construction lines, so I just want to make sure that I'm drawing them very lightly. And then I'm also going to divide my circle in half horizontally as well. Once I have done that, I'm going to take my index finger and my thumb. Remember, we're going to take this section here and then bring it down. That way it will create the length for our chin. So again, I'm taking my index finger and my thumb. My index finger is placed in the very center where my vertical and horizontal line are intersecting. My thumb is down at the bottom of the circle, and I'm just going to create that measurement here, make a slight mark so I know where my chin is gonna be, and then I'm just gonna go to where the sides of my face would be and kind of just bring them down a little bit. When we created the male face, we did a very angular face, right? And we talked about that a lot. We talked about how men tend to have more chiseled jaw lines. They tend to be more angular, so we see more harsher or stronger diagonals in the face. With females, they tend to be a little bit more rounder in the face. So I'm not gonna go through and do a very angular face like I did for my male, but I'm just going to round out my curves a little bit more, just to give it a softer look. Women tend to have softer features. And remember, of course, when we're drawing and we're using these proportions, we're always looking at generals, right? So generally speaking, women tend to have softer faces, softer values, softer features. And of course, those are all general. Remember, there are always exceptions to the rules, right? So I'm just gonna go in until I really like the face shape that I've created. Remember, at the end, we can always go back and either darken or redraw lines that we don't really care for or that we don't like. But for right now, I think this is generally a good enough sized shape for the face. I'm just gonna take my vertical line, I'm gonna bring it all the way down to the bottom of my face. And remember, we're just going to continue on with the same construction lines that we created when we drew our male face. Okay, I'm going to erase out my circle at the bottom, or at least the bottom of my circle, not the entire thing. And I'm also going to erase this horizontal line. It's pretty close to where we will be putting our hairline, but our hairline will be probably a little bit further up. And so I just want to erase that line because I don't want the hairline to be too far down on the head. That'll make it look like she has not a very big forehead, probably look a little bit smaller. So from here, we're going to create our construction line going horizontally through the whole center of the face, which is going to be about here. Okay, remember we're constantly drawing light, always drawing light until we get it right. Remember this is just a sketch, so we can always go back and darken those lines after the fact. But for right now, we want everything to be light, especially when it comes to our construction lines. Remember, we're going to be erasing those out anyway. So I'm going to take the upper portion of my face and I'm going to divide that in half. And remember, that's going to be our hairline. So we have our hairline, we have our eye line. Remember we talked last week that the eye line is going to be directly in the center of the face, right? So if you put your hand on the very top of your head, your other hand on the very bottom of your chin, your eyes are actually in the center of that space. So remember, don't draw your eyes too far up into your forehead, right? You still should have area for your hairline, your forehead, your eyes, your eyebrows, right? So really we're learning at proportion. We're learning at the scale, or we're learning of the scale of the face and the proportion of the face and where things should be placed on the face to make them look symmetrical, to make them look even, and to make them look like they fit on the face naturally. We're gonna take this bottom section here, I'm gonna cut that in half with another horizontal line. Remember, that's going to be where our nose line is, or at least the very bottom of where our nose line is. And we're going to take this last section at the bottom, I'm going to divide that in half again, and that is going to be our lip line. So where the very bottom of our bottom lip is going to be touching will be that line. So at this point, we've gone through, we've created the general shape for our face. We've created our construction lines, right? Bringing that vertical line all the way down through our face. We've created our hairline, our eye line, our nose line, and our lip line. Now I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna start this face the very same way that we started the male face, which is starting from the eyes and then going down. And the way that we did this last time when we're looking at the male face and we were trying to set up the eyes is, remember, we wanna have 4 dash lines, okay? 4 small dash lines that are going onto our eye line. That's going to split this line into 5 even sections. So just as I did the first time where I'm allowing my vertical line to be the center of one of my sections, I'm just gonna start putting in dash lines. Once I've put in these 2 here, I'm gonna put one that separates this section pretty much in half, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the other side. Now keep in mind, you want these sections to generally be the same width, right? Because we want our eyes to be symmetrical and evenly placed on our face. We don't want one eye to be way over to the left and the other one way over to the right. You're gonna put too much space in between the bridge of where the nose should be and the eyes. We also don't want our eyes to be too close together either, right? We should have room left over for the bridge of our nose to be in between our eyes. So it's very important with this step to make sure, again, that you're evenly spacing those out. Remember, if for some reason one section looks larger than the other, you can always go erase it. Hopefully you drew it very light, and just readjust those lines so that they're a little bit more even and our spaces are generally the same. So once you've gone through and you've measured your spaces and you're pretty happy with the spacing of where your eyes are going to be set up, then it's time to draw the eyes. And last time when we spoke about drawing eyes, we talked about that there's different types of eye shapes, right? We have, some people have very rounded eyes, some people have more curved eyes, some people have eyes that are more straight or slanted, some people have more almond-shaped eyes. So really it's up to you for the shape that you want to create for your eyes. The important thing to remember is that our eye line here, that horizontal line, should be the center of your eye. So no matter where or how you are drawing your eyes, I should say, you still want that line to be center. So I'm going to go through, draw my eyes, making sure that the width of my eye does not go past either one of my dash lines, and keeping that horizontal line in the center. And what I do on one side, I have to make sure I do to the other. And of course, I want to make sure that my eyes are generally symmetrical so that they have the same shape and that they have the same width, right? I don't want one eye to be a lot wider than the other. I want them to be the same general size and shape. So once you're happy with the way that your eyes look, you can go in and start erasing out those horizontal lines in between, because we're not going to need those. And now it's time to draw our iris. Now remember, the iris is the colored part of the eye, and last time when we did a facial tutorial, I showed you guys how you could place the iris, right, to make your person look like they're looking in different directions. Whenever I do the face drawings, I always like to have the eyes as if they're looking straight forward at you. So that means that I'm going to leave a little bit of space in between where the bottom of the eyelid is and where my iris is. And I'm also making sure that I have space left over on either side of my iris. And of course, what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. And now it's time to go in and really color in the iris. Of course, we're not going to be using colored pencils on these drawings. I want you just to use your graphite, right, your pencil. But what we're going to be doing is putting in different values. And remember, value is just the lightness and darkness of a color. So the more values we have, remember we talked about this, the more interesting and the more realistic your object or your item or whatever you're drawing for your imagery is going to look. So of course, I want to make sure that my pupil is the darkest part of my eye. And I also want to make sure that there's a highlight. So remember, the highlight is the area where object is reflecting light, so where light is hitting. When we did our male face, I had the highlight be at the very bottom of the eye, and we did kind of a curved or a crescent shape. I'm going to do a bean shape, but I'm going to have it in the upper right-hand corner of the eye. And of course, I'm creating a little shape, but I'm not outlining it very dark. I'm just giving myself an outline to show the area that I want to keep the white of the paper. So I'm gonna go in and I'm going to start coloring my eye. And I didn't do this last time, but I think it's nice to color in the eye in a radial motion, meaning that I'm going in a circular motion around where the shape of the eye is, and that I'm not just coloring either horizontally or vertically. When you do it radial, right, which is pretty much just meaning in a circle, I can kind of control certain areas while also making it look like it's still repeating that rounded shape, right? So everything is kind of permeating or radiating from my center pupil. Okay, I'm still making sure the area where I left white is still white because of course that's my highlight. So I want to make sure it's the white of the paper, but I can kind of go in and darken some areas, adding in a little bit more value. And I'm also going to darken my iris, or at least the outer edge of my iris. And I'm going to color in the same way I did with this eye on my other eye. So I'm just going to move my paper over so you can see. So again, I'm going to go in that radial motion, and I'm not pushing down on my pencil very hard, just enough pressure to put some type of graphite, some type of pencil on our drawing. And then when I want to, I'll start going back in and doing some darker values. Still kind of keeping to that radial motion, right? So starting from my pupil and going out when I color. And I'm just going to go through, darken the iris, or the outer edge of the iris, I should say. And we have our eyes colored in. Now, the next part that we're going to do here is we're going to create the eyelashes, okay? So we're going to create the eyelashes, the eyelid, and also the eyebrows. And this is where differences come in when you're drawing a male face to a female face. So when we did the male face, okay, we did the eyelids first, which we can do now. They're just slightly above, and it's the same as we did for the male. You're just pretty much following that same curve as the top of your eye. So I'm just going to go through add that in a little bit. There we go. And now we're going to put in the eyelashes. And the thing with the eyelashes is that we don't want to draw them going completely straight up. So I don't want to draw like this, right? But essentially I want to make sure that I'm kind of curving the eyelashes out. Now, you don't have to draw 100 different lines to really show the look of eyelashes. So remember, even one small line can really show what we're trying to convey, right? We're showing that we are drawing eyelashes without necessarily drawing a million different pieces of eyelashes. I always like to go from outward. So I'm just gonna go and start creating my eyelashes, curving them just a little bit. And as they go towards the inside of the eye, they're just going to get smaller and smaller. I can go through and darken this line a little bit. She'll look like maybe she's even wearing eyeliner. Right? And I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to create lashes that are longer, that are more curved outward. You can even go through and do as I did over here, which is kind of overlapping the eyelashes a little bit. And as they get towards the inside of the eye, they're just going to be a little bit smaller. So again, when we're drawing the female eye, the eyelashes are going to be more pronounced. Right? They're going to be more pronounced. They're going to be a lot more curved. Whereas when we drew the male, we didn't really draw eyelashes that were super pronounced or standing out. It was really just a dark line that we created, right? Whereas with the female, we're really accentuating those eyelashes because females tend to have longer, more curled or curved eyelashes. Okay, when it comes to the bottom of the eye, I'm also going to make it seem as though she has a lot more eyelashes than what we did on our male. So on our male, we did a few eyelashes, but we didn't really accentuate them or put too much detail into them. When I do the female lashes, I'm gonna go through and I'm just gonna make them maybe a little bit longer, a little bit more curved. You can even do it where they kind of look like they're making almost a V shape, right? Because your lashes are not always going in the same direction. And just as we did on the top, they should be getting a little bit shorter as they come towards the inside of the eye. So they'll be a little bit longer towards the outside and should be a little bit shorter going in towards the inside. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Again, remember, we can always kind of overlap them, make them look like they're in a V shape. And bring them shorter as they come to the inside. If you want, you can also go through and darken that lash line. On the bottom of our eyelid. And now it is time for the eyebrows. So when we talked about the male eyebrows, and I'm just gonna go flip back to my male really quick. We did them more straight, where they were a little bit tapered off or a little bit slightly curved on the outside. They're also a little bit thicker, bushier, and the hair isn't really super groomed, right? We have these nice little hairs coming off in all different directions that make it seem like they're a little bit more naturally grown. Okay, when we do the female, the eyebrows are going to be arched more. Okay, so they're gonna have more of a curved shape to them because most females tend to have, generally speaking, more curved or arched eyebrows than a male. And of course, remember, we're always doing generalizations, okay? But I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna start my eyebrows coming down a little bit, curving up, and bringing them back down. Now, eyebrows are another thing that when we talk about eyebrows, there's lots of ways to make a person show emotion when we're using eyebrows, right? So if I wanted it to make it seem like she was angry, right, I could do really arched, curved eyebrows. And it kind of gives her the look like maybe she's a little bit angry, right? She's scrunching up her face a little bit more. So just by taking this line, and instead of, you know, having a slight arch, it has a really, really high arch, right? It looks different than this arch, right? This one, she's looking a little fierce, but not angry like she is here, right? Another thing that we could do with eyebrows is if you want to make somebody look sad, you can curve the eyebrow, but instead of curving it down, you curve it up at the end towards the inside. And that's going to give her a look that looks a little bit more worried or concerned, right? So the difference between kind of normal, fierce, she's looking forward, and upset or sad, right? So again, we're taking one line, right? The line for our eyebrow, and the way that we draw it can really have an effect on how we show emotion, right, in the face. So I don't want her to be sad. I want her to be happy. But I did want to show you guys that because again, just as we, you know, changed the eye line a little bit to make it look like different directions, you can also change the look of the eyebrows to put some type of emotion into the face, just as you would almost with the mouth as well too. So I'm going to go through and give her some nice looking arched eyebrows here. Definitely more arched than what I created for our male. And you can always go in after and start putting in some individual hairs. This is going to make it look like it has more texture to it, like she didn't necessarily draw them on, but that they're nicely manicured eyebrows. And I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. So again, I'm going to go a little bit higher up. I don't want too much room in between my eyelids and my eyebrows, but I do want a little bit of room because if you look in the mirror, you should always have room in between where your eyebrows are and where your eyelids are. But I also want to make sure that there's enough space right here, right? The space in between where my eyebrow is and my hairline, because that's our forehead, okay? And she should have a decent sized forehead, you know, not a really, really big forehead, but not a small one either, right? So we have to be cautious of that. So I'm going to go through, try and do the same size and shape that I drew before for the eyebrows on the other side. And I'm going to color it in just a little bit here before I start putting in those individual hairs. And now I'm going to go in. I'm going to do them kind of more straight at the center and then slightly start curving them more as they go out towards the outer edge of her face. But again, adding in the lines just kind of gives it a nice texture to make it look like it's really hair and not just, you know, lines that have been colored in. And the last thing that we can do is put in our nose. So remember, this is our nose line, right? That's where the very bottom edge of our nose is going to be. We can take the inside corners of our eyes and bring those down into construction lines, and that will give us a general idea of the width of our nose. So I'm going to go through, create a larger circle, two smaller circles on the end, right? Making sure that they don't go past those lines. I can darken the bottom edge and then erase out the area where the circles are connecting together. And this is where I can really manipulate Remember the size and the shape of the nose. I'm gonna bring that line up just on one side of her eye. You don't really have to do it on the other side, but as long as you do it on one side, it'll be good because it'll give the illusion that the bridge of the nose is going up. Drawing these little teardrop shapes at the bottom, which are gonna be her nostrils. And then I'm just gonna go in on the side and slowly start kind of curving that nose a little bit, giving it some more shape. Erase out my construction lines that I drew from the inside of the eyes coming down. And I can always go through and add a little bit of value to the nose. And you can even use your finger just to kind of smear the area. Normally I wouldn't recommend it. Normally I would recommend you taking some type of shading tool, but for right now I don't have my shading tools out, so I'm just gonna add a little bit of value. Bring this line up a little bit. And really just adjust the nose to look the way I want it to look. So I think what we'll do is we will stop right here, and in our second video, we'll go through and we'll finish out the rest of the features. So we'll finish out the mouth, the neck, the ears, and we'll talk about hair, which is a really fun part, especially when you get to females. So what I want you to do is to take a picture of your face just like this, upload it to our Google Classroom assignment, and then be ready for our next drawing tutorial.